Things really are heating up now, and it is time now to discuss everything that's going on. Tonight's Political Insiders panel. Joining me is David Gazard from DPG Advisory Solutions. He's the founder of that and a former senior Liberal advisor. And we've also got Emma Webster, director at Hawker Britain, and a former Labour advisor. So let's have some fun and welcome to the program. I want to start with one of the latest polls that is a little worrying, guys, for Peter Dutton. The latest Newspoll has just hit, and he has it at 52-48 for the coalition, putting Labour within reach of a majority government. Who knew we'd be talking about that, despite there being no gains for the ALP in terms of their primary vote. Now, the polls also reveal that though voters see Peter Dutton as stronger and more decisive, well, they're not giving him the tick. David Gazard, what do we make of this contradiction? And is there a danger, frankly, that the Libs maybe left their race a little too late to start rolling out the policies here?
I think, you've seen these national polls trending back for some time now. But I don't know whether that is reflecting what is happening in the key seats. So in talking to the Liberal Party campaign, they're very relaxed and comfortable in the seats that they're targeting, which are sort of outside sort of the main metropolitan areas. You've just been talking to Katie, obviously, in Parramatta. It's Western Sydney, it's Werriwa, it's up and down the Central Coast, it's South Coast. It's around those areas in Melbourne, the outer metro seats, hardest hit by cost of living issues, where the Liberals are targeting their campaign. Whether or not the vote goes back in some of the inner city seats where Labor has its campaign headquarters at the end of Oxford Street, we don't know. A national poll is not a marginal seat poll. The other thing I'd say is that there is, according to all pollsters on either side, there's a huge soft vote. So the vote is tending to bounce around based on the most previous announcement that voters have seen. So with 4 weeks to go, it is a very, very interesting race because it could come down to who makes the last biggest mistake or who has the best policy in the final week. So it is that sort of volatile at the moment.
It absolutely is, David. And Emma, let's be honest about it. This isn't all great news for Labour, which also is revealed to have quite a few issues there, including a very low primary vote. Is this a reflection of Labour's ongoing identity crisis between its working class origins and its new, more professional and inner city direction? How do we account for the fact that Labour remains broadly, not hugely popular?
Well, I think I'd still rather be Labor than Liberal looking at these polls, and it's quite consistent across all the major polling we've seen since the start of the proper sort of election campaign. We've seen that slight tick up for Labor as things go ahead. I also think events overseas have played in Labor's favour. Labor, to understand what they stand for, I don't think they have an identity crisis. They represent Middle Australia, and you only have to look at their really strong policy offering and their strong campaign commitments, particularly around healthcare, around education, around addressing cost of living, to know what they stand for and who they are. And it seems to be working too.
Yeah, all right. Well, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. I mean, you would want to be on the Labour side of this poll. But, we've also seen, just to that, Redbridge had another poll this week suggesting that there is a bit of a female issue with coalition voters, or with the coalition trying to get female voters. David Gazard, we saw at the start of this campaign, we saw Anthony Albanese lean very hard into very female-friendly issues, healthcare, the caring economy, that sort of thing. Is this just that orientation paying off?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head in your lead into this, James. If you're on 30% primary, somewhere around 30%, it's dipped for Labor into the 20s, which is historic low territory for primary vote. You don't just have a problem with voters, with female voters, you've got a problem with male voters. Now, neither political party historically is great on primary at the moment, but the coalition is somewhere near 10 percentage points higher than the Labor Party. So forget about just the female vote. If you're dipping into the 20s or the low 30s at historic levels, you have a problem with voters everywhere. And that's where the Labor Party finds itself. Now, here's the other thing. If you're Peter Dutton and you've had a marginal seat now for roughly 20 years, marginal and won it year in and year out, that comes down to male and female voters in that seat. So I don't really understand the angst over female voters for Peter Dutton. It's clear he's had female voter support in the seat of Dixon for 20 rough years to repeatedly get into Parliament. The other side is this, I guess, is an extension of that. If you are going to rely on preferences from some of the ultra-left parties, minor parties, who have supported Hamas, Hezbollah, and by extension, Iran, who have massive problems with women, I don't think your problem is really going to be with Peter Dutton. It might be with sort of global politics, and you might have an issue over where your politics sit vis-a-vis your principles. But to sort of say, accepting votes from parties that support Hezbollah and Hamas, prescribed terrorist organisations, and then looking to a guy who's been successful in his seat in Queensland with men and female voters alike, I don't really follow where the logic is of that if you apply a rational lens to it.
No. Look, that's fair enough. And David, as we know, the only poll that really does count is on Election Day, or at least throughout the early voting period. Now, I want to talk about something else which is fascinating to me, this issue around the port of Darwin and the absolutely extraordinary scenes Friday as the Prime Minister called into a Darwin radio program to gazump opposition leader Peter Dutton, who had planned to announce his own plan to get back the port of Darwin, which the Chinese took over under a 99-year lease, I think when Malcolm Turnbull was PM. Have a listen to this.
I think Territorians are fairly familiar with what's happened. We've talked about it. There have been numerous inquiries over the past decade. Have you got a plan to do something about this?
We do, and we've been working for some time with Treasury and with our finance department as well. We've been talking with superannuation funds about getting it back into Australian hands.
David, I want to go back to you on this here and start with you on this here, and then I'll come to you, Emma. But, this is very interesting to me because, number one, Anthony Albanese tried so hard to get out ahead of Peter Dutton on this. But number two, Labor had previously, in 2023, I believe, ruled out the idea of trying to buy back the port of Darwin. So, David, what explains the backflip here and the tactics?
Well, first of all, start with the arithmetic at this election, and this is why national polls don't really matter a hill of beans when you're thinking about seats like Solomon and Lingiari, the two Northern Territory seats. This has been an issue that the CLP, the Country Liberal Party, has been pushing in the Territory for some months, and Sky has been actually fantastic about reporting this. This has been known for some time that this is a debate. Clearly, the Coalition have decided to make it a key part of their offering at this election, and it comes as no surprise that it probably leaked before the announcement was going to be made, and that the Prime Minister, deciding that he needed to look like he was leading on the issue, decided he'd announce policy on ABC radio, and of course it didn't go terribly well because it hadn't been particularly well thought out. So, he wanted to get in before Peter Dutton did. But this is a strategic issue that the Coalition wants to address. There's also an issue with the ownership of the Port of Newcastle. It's 50% owned, so that will become an issue, I would say, in the upcoming days of the campaign. But it really comes down to who's decided to look tough, who's decided to look strong, and the Prime Minister decided he'd get in first with announcing what was a half-baked policy to get in front of Peter Dutton before he did it on Saturday morning.
Yeah, and Emma, it's an interesting thing when you actually parse what the Prime Minister said beyond the headlines. It does sort of look like he was trying to look tough, but actually leave himself an out if it doesn't work out, if the strategy doesn't work out. Is this an example of Anthony Albanese trying to give that sort of tough leader impression and counter Peter Dutton, who, as we saw in the Newspoll earlier, does have advantages when it comes to being seen as tough and decisive?
I don't think that's what he was intending to do. I don't think anyone could really compete with Peter Dutton when it comes to the tough man sort of act. But if we're talking about sort of gazumping Dutton when it comes to this, Albanese was about a decade ahead of him. He opposed it in 2015 when it was first under consideration, and when the Liberal government with Scott Morrison as Treasurer paid $20 million or close to the NT government to acquire or to encourage them as an incentive to lease that port. So, you know, a radio interview is one thing, but Albanese has consistently been opposed to this.
Yeah, but it's interesting too, though, because speaking of China, Anthony Albanese got a bit of praise this week from Chinese state media this week for speaking the truth when it came to the Chinese sea research vessel that was traveling along the south coast of Australia. And the Chinese state media also accused Peter Dutton of beating the drums of war. Emma, though, just to your point, though, about Anthony Albanese and China, this does look a bit funny for Albanese that he's won the endorsement of the CCP's state media.
Well, James, I'll also remind you of comments that Dutton made in January this year when asked about his relationship or his party's relationship with China, and he said unequivocally that a government he led would have a better relationship with China than the Albanese government does. That is just clearly, based on this, very unlikely, very untrue, no details, similar to a lot of the policies he has announced. Albanese, since coming to government, and his ministers have worked with China to re-engage, particularly around trade, which is incredibly important in today's climate, and he has done so without compromising Australian values, and working with them in a serious and professional way where we can agree on some things and disagree on others, and work forward in that way.
Indeed. Hey, before I let you guys go, let's have a little bit of fun. It wouldn't be an election campaign without mishaps, and there were a couple of doozies this week. There was Peter Dutton and his botched footy kick.
Oh, yes.
Oh, he's sleeve open too. Oh no.
You all right? Come sit down. He's all right.
Okay, tell me you were recording for that. That's your exclusive vision too, mate. You got to.
And of course, there was Anthony Albanese falling off stage.
Photos with everyone, okay?
Now, I'll put this to both of you guys. Anthony Albanese denied that he fell, which I thought was weird, but very quickly, David Gazard, these become these sort of defining images of campaigns. Think about Bill Shorten biting sideways into the sausage, Tony Abbott with an onion. Do these make much of a difference for people, or is it just a bit of fun that gets people engaged, or does it matter at all? David?
The thing that really puzzled me about this one, everyone trips over. You know,
Yeah.
Howard tripped over in the 2007 campaign. People slip, people slide. They're human beings. It was obvious there was about 100 cameras catching the Prime Minister falling off stage, and the thing that made this dangerous territory for him was he denied it was off stage. So it started a cavalcade of all the other things that he denied. So the coalition linked it to the $275 price cut for energy and said, why is this guy lying all the time? So, you know, I get it, right? People don't work with kids, don't work with animals, obviously don't work with footies around cameramen anymore.
Yeah.
Your advances to check the stage to see where you're going to go. It's where you sort of look like a phony around that becomes the problem.
Yeah, Emma, I was just a little struck by it. I mean, as David says, everybody falls over. Everybody was treating it as a big meh. And then he says, well, I didn't fall. And everyone's like, well, but you fell. What's that about, Emma?
Look, possibly, you know, a bit of pride was damaged. I don't know what was going on there. But as for the footy kick, I think we might need to go a bit further. I think we might need to pass legislation to ban politicians from playing ball sports or any sort of sports on campaign trails, because it never ends well. And I'd probably even extend that to David Pocock, who probably has some of the best skills in the parliament too.
Emma Webster, I think you're right. I think you'd probably get some bipartisan endorsement on that across the network here. Thank you so much, David Gazard, Emma Webster.